this exercise is really valuable in that sense, that we will learn so much about the armed forces of the Philippines, and we will learn how we will need to adapt to the new challenges, the new threats that we are facing today, and the threats that we will be facing in the future.
The Philippines is entering a period where every move in its defense planning carries far greater weight than it did even a few years ago. Confrontations with China in the West Philippine Sea have grown sharper, more deliberate, and far more confident on Beijing's side. Water cannon strikes, dangerous blocking maneuvers, and electronic jamming have shifted from rare incidents to routine encounters, signaling that the status quo is steadily eroding. At the same time, fears are rising that a conflict involving Taiwan could easily spill into Philippine territory, drawing the archipelago into a regional storm, whether it wants to be involved or not. Geography offers little protection. If war broke out in the Taiwan Strait, Philippine airspace, waters, and military installations would instantly become strategic ground.
Contact front!
Against this backdrop, the armed forces of the Philippines is undergoing a dramatic evolution, moving away from decades of internal security and counterinsurgency and toward the nation's first serious attempt at building a true external defense posture. New missile systems, radar networks, fighter aircraft plans, and naval acquisitions mark the largest shift in military priorities since the Cold War. But equipment alone doesn't answer the most important question now hanging over the entire defense establishment. Can the Philippines hold the line alone before allies arrive? It is this question, unsettling, necessary, and urgent, that has driven the creation of the new Solo Defense War Plan. The exercise forces the AFP to assess the uncomfortable scenarios many hoped never to consider. Defending the archipelago for the first 30 days of a major conflict with no guaranteed reinforcements, no immediate allied intervention, and no assumptions of instant support. It demands an honest accounting of the country's vulnerabilities, from fuel reserves and ammunition stocks to mobility gaps and command networks. It also requires a sober look at the military's ability to redistribute forces between Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao under contested conditions, a task that challenges even far more equipped armed forces. In a region where power balances are shifting rapidly and conflict risks are no longer theoretical, this moment matters because it answers a simple but defining question. If war arrives before help does, how long can the Philippines stand on its own? The exercise isn't about pessimism, it's about facing reality, preparing for worst-case scenarios, and ensuring that the country's first line of defense is ready long before any ally is able to respond.
Why is it important for us to train?
Yes, sir.
Well, the mandate of the Armed Forces of the Philippines is to defend the territory and our sovereignty.
The centerpiece of the Philippines' newest defense effort is AJEX DAGIT-PA 2025, a sweeping war game designed to push the armed forces far beyond routine drills and into the realm of full-spectrum national defense. At its core, the exercise serves a singular purpose: to validate the country's new unilateral defense strategy, known as Bantay Kalayaan, a plan built on the premise that the Philippines must be able to fight alone, at least in the crucial opening month of a major conflict. Rather than rehearsing ideal scenarios or controlled simulations, the exercise forces commanders and units to confront the harsh realities of a sudden attack. Disrupted communications, contested airspace, sabotaged logistics, and simultaneous threats across multiple domains. It is, in every sense, a stress test for a nation preparing to protect itself without immediate outside assistance. The war game's design reflects this seriousness. For the first time, the AFP is examining how its forces would respond if its early warning systems were challenged, its mobility restricted, or its supply lines degraded. Command posts must practice shifting to backup networks. Air units must calculate what they can maintain once missiles begin falling. And naval forces must plan for operations even when sea routes are under pressure.
We do not engage in political disputes or allegations. This matter should be resolved through appropriate legal and institutional mechanisms and not public confrontation.
The exercise is built to expose gaps, whether in fuel stockpiles, ammunition reserves, joint coordination, or operational endurance, long before they become fatal weaknesses in a real conflict. Every failure uncovered now becomes a correction for later. But what makes AJEX DAGIT-PA 2025 even more significant is its scope. The AFP is no longer focusing exclusively on land maneuver battles or isolated skirmishes. The exercise places heavy emphasis on integrated air and missile defense, probing how the military can shield critical bases and civilian infrastructure from long-range strikes. It includes scenarios for protecting offshore energy platforms, vital national assets that lie within the very waters where tensions with China are highest. Amphibious units practice retaking islands and seaports lost in the early stages of conflict, while naval elements refine surface fire support missions designed to suppress hostile landing forces. Airfields and coastlines are put under simulated attack, requiring rapid dispersal of aircraft and urgent fortification of defensive positions. Modern threats are not ignored. Cyber units engage in offensive and defensive operations to defend command networks. Electronic warfare teams simulate jamming and counter-jamming across multiple regions. Even space domain threats are folded into the exercise, acknowledging that satellite disruption, once a distant concern, is now part of the real strategic environment. The AFP is, for perhaps the first time, rehearsing a war that spans land, air, sea, cyber, and space simultaneously. AJEX DAGIT-PA 2025 isn't just another military event. It is the most honest, unfiltered look the Philippines has taken at its own ability to defend its sovereignty in a rapidly changing region. And the questions raised by the exercise, both encouraging and uncomfortable, will define the country's defense decisions in the years ahead. One of the most consequential changes in the Philippines' new defense architecture is the creation of the AFP Strategic Command, or STRATCOM, a formation activated in October 2025 and built specifically for one purpose: to take command the moment the country enters a wartime footing.
Considering the threats that we're facing, syempre i-compare natin yung capability natin with the capability of our other neighbors.
For decades, the armed forces relied on its general headquarters battle staff to manage both routine operations and crisis response. But the demands of a potential high-intensity conflict have now outgrown what an overstretched staff can realistically handle. STRATCOM represents a clean break from that old structure.
As we are in a regimented life, we respect the freedom of speech, and of course, meron din kaming sariling saloobin bawat isa sa amin.
It is designed from the ground up to command and coordinate large-scale operations across the Philippine archipelago, fusing all domains of warfare into a single, fully dedicated wartime command. Unlike previous centralized setups, STRATCOM assumes responsibility over the areas that would immediately come under threat in any major conflict. The exclusive economic zone, outposts in the West Philippine Sea, northern and western air defense sectors, and the multi-domain environment where the Philippines would have to operate under pressure. Its mandate spans air, sea, cyber, and space operations, allowing it to pull information from diverse sensors, satellites, radars, naval patrols, cyber units, and air defense platforms. This structure gives the AFP something it has never had before: a command center built not for day-to-day coordination, but for rapid wartime decision-making, synchronized targeting, and national-level operational control. The significance of this change cannot be overstated. By transferring wartime responsibilities from GHQ to a completely new structure, the AFP eliminates one of its biggest vulnerabilities. the transition lag between peace and conflict. In the past, GHQ had to transform itself on the fly, shifting from administrative duties to warfighting command, a transition that could introduce fatal delays in the opening hours of an invasion. With Stratcom, that gap closes. The military gains the ability to activate unified command at a moment's notice, bringing together air defense units, naval forces, ground commands, missile batteries, and cyber defense teams under one synchronized operational plan. Stratcom becomes the nerve center, the brain, responsible for deciding where to deploy forces, how to defend critical bases, and how to manage the chaos of multi-front threats.
I'm very happy to report that yung pong ating mga miyembro ng Armed Forces of the Philippines are very professional. Kaya kahit na po may mga ganitong nangyayari sa ating lipunan, we are aware of what is happening, but of course, we remain professional.
General Bronner captured the essence of the decision during its activation, noting frankly, the GHQ battle staff cannot transform into a full-blown warfighting staff. That is why we rushed the creation of Strategic Command. His words underline the urgency driving the AFP's reform efforts. Stratcom was not created for peacetime efficiency. It was created because time is now a luxury the Philippines may not have if conflict erupts in the region. Stratcom is more than a new headquarters. It is the institutional recognition that modern war requires a different level of coordination, speed, and clarity than the Philippines has ever needed before.
It follows the truck. It follows the person. If somebody...
In a scenario where the country must fight alone, even briefly, this command structure may become the single most important factor determining whether the AFP can withstand the opening phase of a conflict until help arrives. Pag-asa Island, known internationally as THITU, is no longer just a remote outpost. It has become the emotional and strategic centerpiece of the Philippines' frontline defense in the West Philippine Sea. Home to around 400 Filipinos, it is the only island in the Spratlys with a functioning civilian community, complete with families, teachers, local officials, and children who attend school under the shadow of military patrols and foreign surveillance. Unlike uninhabited reefs or remote military detachments, Pag-asa represents something far more delicate, a living, breathing community that exists directly inside one of the world's most contested maritime flashpoints. For that reason alone, analysts warn that if conflict with China ever erupted, Pag-asa would be among the first and most vulnerable targets, not just for its location, but for what it symbolizes. This reality is why the island has become central to the Philippines' newest defense exercises. Amphibious units train along its beaches, rehearsing how to reinforce or retake a threatened island. ISR teams practice collecting intelligence under pressure, mapping possible landing zones, and monitoring surrounding waters constantly patrolled by Chinese vessels. Airlift drills simulate rapid troop deployment in case the island's defenders need reinforcements within hours, not days. These activities aren't theoretical. They reflect urgent planning shaped by Pag-asa's geography and the growing likelihood that any confrontation in the West Philippine Sea would place the island directly in harm's way. Strategically, Pag-asa's importance stretches far beyond its modest size. It is the nearest Philippine-held territory to China's militarized bases on Subi Reef, installations equipped with long-range sensors, missile systems, and runways capable of hosting fighter jets and heavy aircraft. That proximity places Pag-asa under constant surveillance, and in a crisis, under immediate operational threat. Yet its value is not only tactical, but symbolic. Losing Pag-asa would not simply be the loss of a small community. It would fracture the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, weaken its legal and diplomatic standing, and ripple through regional perceptions of Manila's ability to hold territory in disputed waters. For the AFP, Pag-asa is more than a point on a map. It is the frontline staging ground where readiness is tested, deterrence is demonstrated, and the stakes of any future conflict become painfully clear.
Stood up over the gun the whole time.
Every exercise conducted there carries a quiet, sobering reminder. Defending the community on Pag-asa is not only about holding territory, but about protecting the human face of the country's maritime claim. This first month matters because it aligns with how modern conflict is expected to unfold. China's strategy in the region depends on rapid dominance, taking or neutralizing key territories before outside powers can intervene decisively. It is built around speed, shock, and the ability to create strategic facts on the ground faster than others can respond. On the other side of the equation, even the Philippines' closest allies face major hurdles in reacting quickly. U.S. naval strike groups need time to reposition. Japanese and Australian forces must navigate political processes, mobilization timelines, and long transit routes. In this high-stakes race, the Philippines must absorb the first blow and remain operational long enough for the political, logistical, and military machinery of its partners to move into place. This is where the new training regime becomes brutally clear. The AFP's objective is to measure how long it can keep the country functional under extreme pressure. Can airfields survive repeated strikes and continue launching sorties? Can fuel depots stay protected long enough to keep aircraft, vehicles, and ships moving? Can radar sites withstand electronic attacks and maintain situational awareness? Can remote islands like Pag-asa hold out under siege? Can ports remain open for logistics, or will they be shut down early in the campaign? Every one of these questions cuts to the heart of the country's survival during the opening phase of conflict. The exercise forces commanders to confront the raw truth. Survival is not about grand victories in the first week, but endurance. The Philippines' ability to hold air bases, keep radars alive, protect critical infrastructure, and retain control of key outposts will determine not only how long it can fight, but whether allies will have something left to reinforce when they finally arrive. The first month expectation may be harsh, but it reflects the reality of modern warfare and the urgency behind preparing for it now, rather than when it is already too late. A major shift is now underway inside the armed forces of the Philippines, a historic pivot from internal counterinsurgency toward a true external defense posture. At the heart of this transition is the Comprehensive Archipelagic Defense Concept, or CADC, the first official doctrine to embrace the idea that the country must secure its territory from the coastlines outward. For decades, Philippine defense thinking stopped at the shoreline. Now it extends deep into the West Philippine Sea and across every maritime corridor surrounding the archipelago.
With the fluid security situation in our region, it is imperative that the armed forces of the Philippines, and of course the Navy, is substantially equipped, trained, and always on alert to respond to any and all exigencies that may confront our nation.
CADC represents a mental and strategic break from the past. It acknowledges that the threats facing the Philippines are no longer confined to insurgents in the mountains, but powerful state actors projecting force across sea and air. Running parallel to CADC is the Bantay Kalayaan plan, the Philippines' new unilateral battle blueprint, quietly developed in late 2024 and refined through multiple DAGIT-PA exercises. While CADC shapes the overarching doctrine, Bantay Kalayaan is the practical warfighting script.
Guided by the values of honor, service, and patriotism, the dedication and sacrifices of the men and women of the armed forces of the Philippines transpire to make our nation stronger and safer.
It is built on island denial strategies, sea denial operations, layered missile defense, distributed basing, and the assumption that Philippine units will have to operate independently, dispersed, and under intense pressure. The plan demands flexibility, missile batteries shifting overnight, air assets dispersing across hidden strips, naval units repositioning constantly, and ground forces preparing to lose communications but continue the fight. CADC and Bantay Kalayaan mark the clearest sign yet that the Philippines is preparing to move beyond symbolic presence and into genuine territorial defense. Another striking change emerging from DAGIT-PA 2025 is the deliberate reduction in troop numbers, from the usual 3,000 participants to only around 2,000 this year. This is not a downgrade, it is a recalibration. The AFP is moving away from massed formations towards specialized, precision-oriented units built for multi-domain battles. Instead of sheer numbers, the exercise now puts a premium on elite capabilities. Rapid reaction teams, missile operators, drone specialists, cyber analysts, amphibious platoons, and air defense crews. What makes this evolution even more significant is the rising role of the Reserve Command, the Philippine Coast Guard, and the Philippine National Police. Their inclusion reflects the reality that any real-world crisis in the archipelago will not be fought by the military alone. Coast Guard vessels may be the first responders at sea. Police units may secure ports, bridges, and urban centers. Reservists will fill logistics gaps and defend critical infrastructure. Integrating these agencies into the war game mirrors the kind of first response environment the Philippines would face in an actual conflict, one where the lines between military and civilian protection blur, and victory depends on coordination as much as firepower. This transition shows a truth shaping modern warfare. The next conflict will not hinge on the most boots on the ground, but on which units can shoot, move, and communicate faster across multiple domains. Perhaps the most unprecedented element of DAGIT-PA 2025 is its expansion into full multi-domain warfare, cyber, electronic, and space. These domains were once theoretical concerns. Today, they are inseparable from modern conflict. Cyber units drilled against simulated attacks targeting energy grids, satellite links, banking networks, and military command systems, a scenario that mirrors the first strike in almost every major conflict today. Electronic warfare teams practiced counter-jamming maneuvers, a direct response to China's growing reliance on electronic interference around the West Philippine Sea. The fact that these drills now exist marks a profound strategic shift. It acknowledges that the Philippines must be able to keep radars alive, keep communications running, and keep its digital infrastructure functioning even while under coordinated attack. For the first time, space domain threats were also woven into the exercise. Units rehearsed how to maintain satellite communication resilience, track incoming missile trajectories, and integrate space-based ISR data during combat scenarios. This signals an AFP entering the era of modern warfare, where what happens in orbit can decide what happens on the ground. Every component of this year's exercise sends a message. To China, it signals that the Philippines is no longer preparing as a passive state, hoping diplomacy alone will hold the line. Instead, it is shaping itself into a resilient archipelagic fortress, one prepared to deny, delay, and disrupt any attempt to seize territory quickly. To the United States and allied partners, the exercise shows that Manila is no longer relying solely on mutual defense treaties for survival. The Philippines is building its own credible self-defense capacity, a crucial requirement for any alliance looking to operate effectively in contested waters. For allies watching closely, this enhances confidence that Manila will not collapse in the opening days of conflict, but will stay standing long enough for reinforcements to matter. The ripple effects across the region are immediate. Taiwan views the exercises as part of its own defensive buffer. Japan sees expanded opportunities for joint ISR and air defense cooperation. Australia welcomes Manila's push for resilience, knowing it reduces strategic pressure across the first island chain. Even ASEAN states are taking notice, some cautiously, others quietly encouraged, as the Philippines transitions from a reactive posture to a more assertive, prepared role in regional security. If you like the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.